The red on air bulb above the studio door was the only light in the building that didn't flicker. Everything else obeyed the storm. The hallway fluorescence stuttered. The lobby exit sign hiccuped like a nervous heart. Even the old coffee maker blinked 12 o'clock in panicked Morse. But the on-air lamp burned like a lighthouse. Miles Gray liked it that way. If the night had a spine, this was the single vertebra that refused to break. "Good midnight to the sleepless and the haunted," he said, voice low. The way he'd learned made people's shoulders drop and their secrets rise. "You're tuned to the haunting hour. True American ghost tales, your stories, your roads, your dead who don't know how to stop." He breathed with the board. In. Out. A slider rose under his thumb. Line 2 glowed steady. His producer, Nadia, tapped the glass with a pen and mouthed, "Truck driver. Route 66. Miles nodded and took the call. "Name and where you're calling from?" The man's drawl rolled down the wire like heat mirage. "Name's Red. Freight out of Barstow, running east. I ain't superstitious, but I am burning daylight in the dark, so I figure I owe somebody the truth. Go ahead, Red." I picked up a hitchhiker near Amboy. Girl in a white Sunday dress, dust all over her hem, carrying a shoebox like it was a baby. Didn't want to leave her on the shoulder. Wind yowling. Whole sky looking like aluminum. Miles glanced at the clock over the control room window. 12:33 a.m. The digits bled and steadied. He felt the show slide into its groove. That soft click when strangers started trusting him more than their own silence. Red continued. She didn't talk at first. Stared out the window, fingers white on that box. After a while, she says she's going to meet someone at the diner in Cadiz Junction. Her voice, he paused. "You ever hear a person who don't breathe between words?" "Sometimes," Miles said, "because sometimes they called this show. She asks if I'll play a song. I tell her I ain't got a radio on, but I can hum. She smiles without teeth. Tells me, 'The haunting hour will play it for me.' I swear she said your show, mister." I didn't even tell her I listened. Nadia's pen stopped tapping. She gave him a look. Miles felt heat along his arms, as if someone had breathed there. "What happened at the diner?" he asked. "I pulled in." Red's voice thinned. "Neon open sign did, but the clock over the counter's lit. 3:33 a.m. It ain't 3:33. I know time. I look over to tell the girl to hang tight while I check, but he swallowed. And the line clicked softly with the sound. She's gone. Gone as in got out? Gone as in Red's cab filled the line with the thin sound of the highway. Seat empty. Door shut. Air still cold where she was. Miles leaned toward the condenser like a priest to the confessional. And the box? Still there. Red's breath hitched. I ain't proud. I opened it. Inside, another long pause. Dried bouquet. Baby's breath, roses all brown like fall leaves. And a highway patrol badge, dulled out. It had a name scratched on the back. Static yawned. And the same name was carved into the lid from inside, like she'd carried it longer than a lifetime. He watched the needles on the VU meters dance and tried not to think of the word inside. What name, Red? The line breathed. The studio did too. Miles heard the distant thrum of the building's air as if it lived. At the edge of his hearing, something like a second line came in under Red's wet paper, whispering. Her name was Lila, Red said. Lila Rowe. Nadia typed the name and spun her screen toward him. She was fast, good at finding the edges of legends. Lila Rowe. Cadiz Junction, minus 1,987, flashed across in block letters. The search page rendered slow, as though the web was reluctant. Keep going, Miles said. I took the shoebox into the diner, Red said. Door wasn't locked, though it felt like it ought to be. Smelled like coffee ghosts. I'm calling out. Nobody answers. There's a waitress station with a plastic menu wedged under a short leg. I set the box down, and there is this faded newspaper clipping pinned to the corkboard. Local girl killed on Route 66. The photo, they always use the smiling photo, don't they? That was her. The dress. The hair pulled back like she's bracing for a wind you can't see. Miles pictured it. The pale rectangle of newspaper yellowed to the color of fat. A girl who didn't know yet that film sometimes catches the last version of you. He was careful with the next question. How did she die? Says she was waiting for her fiancé. He was a highway patrol officer. Never showed. She set out to meet him anyway. Semi-clipped her by the diner turnoff. Red exhaled. Listen, this the part I ain't told nobody. When I looked up from that clipping, there she was. In the front window. Not outside it, in the glass. Like a reflection. But it wasn't reflecting me, or the room correct. It was only her, sitting where she'd been in my truck, staring at the place where I was, and her mouth she wasn't smiling anymore. How long did you look? Miles asked. Long enough to see her hand press flat to the inside of the glass, Red said. Long enough to see the condensation bloom around it, like she was really breathing there. The studio temperature sank the way it does when someone opens a walk-in freezer. Miles swallowed and tasted metal, as if he'd pricked his tongue. He flicked his gaze to the hallway. The exit sign blinked twice and held. What did you do then? I grabbed the box and ran, Red said. Got in the cab, started the engine, looked at my passenger mirror to pull away. Mr. Gray. Miles didn't remember telling the man his name. She was still in the mirror. Not in the seat, not in the cab. Just in the glass, like the glass had kept a copy. She watched me all the way down the driveway. I kept driving. 30 miles. 50. Her face got smaller in the mirror, but it didn't go away and it didn't change. When the sky started to pale, she finally faded. I've been hauling her flowers and that badge ever since. Can't seem to throw it out. Miles closed his eyes, the board humming under his fingertips. Red, is the shoebox with you now? It is. Can you read the name on the badge again? Red's breath fogged the mic on his end. Paper rustled. Row, he said. Same as hers, but the initials are. The line bristled, turned to B's. CR. Nadia's search results finally snapped into focus. Miles watched her mouth the words as she read. Officer Charles Rowe. He'd vanished the night of Lila's death. Never arrived at Cadiz Junction. There was a note about internal investigation, and the article cut off behind a paywall. Red, Miles said softly, thank you for trusting us. If you're willing, I'd like you to leave the box at a police station along your route. Call us back when you do. The board stuttered in his hands. A hiss bloomed across the room, rolled up the walls like a wave dragging pebbles. Miles sat very still. The sound wasn't in his cans. It was behind him. He turned. The studio window 6 panes thick, made to keep the world out, was misting from the inside. A handprint flared there, small, perfect, gone. He looked back at the digital clock above the glass. 12:33 had become 3:33. He counted to 3. The numbers resolved to 12:33. Nadia's eyes were too wide for the distance between their faces. Red, Miles said into the mic, deliberately steady. Still here, Red said. I think she ain't, not anymore. I think she got wherever she was going. Miles thumbed the fader down. We'll take a break, he told the listeners. He hit the bumper, a swell of low cello and highway hiss, the show's signature. As soon as the light flipped to standby, the building woke up. A printer in the corner he'd forgotten existed, coughed to life, and began spitting out thermal paper. The machine was a fossil kept around for contest entries and charity drives, but it rolled like it had been waiting. Miles crossed to it, heart hammering. The header bled Caltrans incident report in faint block font, and under it a date that made his eyes skip. October 31st, 1987. Nadia read over his shoulder. Is someone screwing with us? The report listed a collision at Cadiz Junction involving a pedestrian and a semi. Then, a second-line item at the same timestamp. Single vehicle accident. Coordinates. A note in parentheses. Initial impact unknown. Patrol unit never arrived at scene. Last radio ping registered at this address, and then the address of their station, 20 miles away. Built in an old brick factory that had become a siren for radio, because radio liked ghosts. Dead air, dead sound, dead time resurrected by voices. Nadia spoke first. We weren't here in 87. The building was, Miles said, as though the bricks were a mouth that could fill with the wrong breath. He checked the bottom of the page. The time the print job started, 12:36 a.m. The machine's internal. Clock displayed 3:33 a.m. in its tiny corner window. The storm sizzled outside like steak on a griddle. Going back in 30, Nadia said, but it came out as a question. She touched the window where the handprint had flashed, like you touch a headstone you don't remember visiting. Miles returned to the microphone. The on-air lamp burned warm. He could feel its heat on his cheek, as if it had a pulse. He spoke to the city in the tone he used for new edges. Welcome back to the haunting hour. If you're just joining us, we heard from a driver on Route 66 who may have given a final ride to a girl named Lila. If anyone in Cadiz Junction remembers her, give us a call. He hesitated, a breath barely there. If Officer Charles Rowe's family is listening, we're sorry for your loss. He didn't mean to say loss. He meant to say name. The word chose itself. The board lights shimmered. Line 4 lit, then died. Line 1 lit, then died. Someone or something was dialing and hanging up with the bored patience of a cat slapping a toy. The squall in his headphones had layered itself into a shape that felt almost like harmony. Under it, the barely there susurrus of a woman speaking too close to the diaphragm. Miles leaned close. What is it you want us to know? He asked the air. It was a performance, but also not. His breath fogged the mic's pop filter in a crescent that looked like a smile bitten in half. For a heartbeat, everything in the room stopped pretending. The exit sign held steady. The storm drew a single breath and waited. The clock read 12:33 and 3:33, both at once, the way a memory and a lie share a body. The printers were quiet again. The room smelled faintly of wet roses. Next caller, Miles said, because he knew the ritual mattered. He took line 3, because line 3 never meant trouble, because people tell themselves that. You're on the haunting hour. A voice like brushed silk said, I'm calling from the bayou. Miles felt his mouth shape a smile for the audience and a grimace for himself. He shuffled the Caltrans report under the board, face down, as if paper could be blinded by denial. Go ahead, he said. We're listening. The line breathed water. The bumper faded shallow, dissolving into rayness, and the red on-air bulb warmed the room the way a stove warms a cabin. Miles kept his voice steady, as if steadiness could be contagious. We're back with the haunting hour. Our next caller says she's phoning from the bayou. He pressed line 3. You're on. The voice was river slow, dragged across gravel. Claudine Boudreau, Terrebonne Parish. I wouldn't be calling if I had a choice. Nadia lifted a finger. She'd start a quick background pull. The keys clicked softly. Boudreau, Terrebonne, missing persons. The ritual of diligence. What brings you in tonight, Miss Boudreau? Miles asked. The lights, she said. The little blue ones that float over the water, like lanterns without hands. Old folks call them faux follets. They don't look mean. That's what's wicked about them. They play gentle. The studio cooled a notch. Somewhere above the acoustic tiles, something tapped like a patient metronome. Miles glanced up. One of the tiles had gone a darker shade, as if it remembered rain. Claudine took a breath that sounded like reeds combing a boat hull. My boy Etienne, he followed him once. Year after my husband passed. I told him, don't you go chasing what don't want to be caught. He laughed at me. Said the lights looked like somebody needing help. Said he heard Daddy's knock on the old Cypress Pier. 3 soft, 1 hard. Same as always. The tapping above the studio aligned. 3 soft beats, 1 hard thud. Nadia's eyes met his. When Etienne didn't come back, Claudine continued, I went out with a lantern. The water was low, and the mud smelled like pennies. I found his footprints turn into drag marks near a stand of knees. Rope burns on the bark there, fresh, like something tied itself to the world, to pull something else away. Miles adjusted the fader a hair to hide the small shake in his hand. You believe the lights lead people into the water. Don't believe, no. The line breathed close enough to fog his earpads. They're tricks, but they learn your house. They learn you're dead. They talk with voices you trust. People go out thinking they're answering love. A drip touched the edge of Miles's mixing board, darkening the wood. Another struck the carpet by his shoe, cold through the leather. He flicked his eyes to the ceiling. The damp tile had bloomed a round mouth. Water threaded through and fell again tap onto the corner of the Caltrans report that he flipped face down after Red's call. The ink feathered like a bruise. Nadia slid a stack of paper towels into the studio without opening the door, just cracked it an inch and reached, keeping the room sealed for sound and for superstition. Her other hand held up her screen. Claudine Boudreau, local fisher family. Husband, outside, deceased 3 years ago. Then another, more recent item. Teenager Etienne Boudreau missing. The article was thin on fact, heavy on rumor. People always were when it came to lights. What do they want, Miss Boudreau? Miles asked, dabbing water as if the puddle were a patient with a fever. They want you to come where they are. Claudine's tone had none of the drama of a storyteller. It had the flat force of a weather report. They want you to cross. Folks round here talk about crossroads and ferry points, places where the world is weak. Junctions, Miles thought. Cadiz Junction, Broadcast Junction. The building's old bones creaked, a ship turning in a slow swell. Do the lights keep a time? He asked, watching the clock like it was a living animal. They like 3:33, she said. Old priest used to say that's the mocking hour. I say it as just when the water breathes low enough, you can hear what lives under it. The studio clock blinked. For the duration of a blink, it held 3:33, the way a held note occupies a room. Then it fell obediently back to 12:41. Nadia didn't look at the numerals. She looked at Miles, which told him she'd seen it too. Ms. Boudreau, can you describe the lights? He said, moving the show forward because forward was a spell. Not bright, not dim, she said. Like a tea light under a mason jar, but blue. They don't reflect right. You hold a mirror to him, and you won't see him in the glass. You'll see what they brought with him instead. Red's girl in the mirror. The thought landed cleanly, linking one superstition to another like planks across a ditch. Mirrors keep copies. Water keeps debts. Nadia scribbled a note on a post-it and pressed it against the window from the control room side. Mirror does not equal reflection. Water equals voice. Claudine's voice softened. Last night, after midnight, they came up the bayou like party guests late to a wake. 3 of them. I heard the knock on the pier. Again, 3 soft, 1 hard. I told myself I wouldn't go. Then, her breath shivered. Then my husband's voice says, plain as payback. Cher, come help me lift the net. Miles found himself leaning so close to the mic, the pop filter cooled his lip. What did you do? I went to the door, she said, shame and defiance laid in equal measure. I put my hand on the knob. And then I remembered the last time I heard his voice, for true. In the hospital. It had weight. It had air. The one on the porch didn't. A pause like a levee holding. So I said, "You ain't my outside," and I shut it. And all 3 lights went mean. How does a light go mean? Miles asked, because asking was the bridge between disbelief and the thing with teeth. They started working together, she said, moving like a hand with 3 fingers, feeling for a latch. They pressed up against the window, and the glass went cold as a morgue slab. I seen my own breath in my own house. Then the littlest one zipped to my wind chimes and played a tune. A tune used to whistle, and he was trying to get away with something. The ceiling vent in the studio coughed, and the smell changed wet earth, old diesel, the copper penny of marsh mud. The drips found each other on the board and made a puddle that reflected not the studio ceiling, but a cypress canopy hung with Spanish moss. The reflection rippled like a throat swallowing. Nadia, compelled and careful, tilted her phone over the puddle and snapped a photo, then another. In both, the reflected trees stood where the studio tiles should be. "Ms. Boudreau," Miles said, "are you alone right now?" A pause. The crisp sound of a match touched to a wick. "No," she said finally. "I'm on my back porch. I lit a candle. The lights don't like church wax much. I set a glass of salt by the door. They don't like that neither. My sister says it's nonsense. But I feel them pull when I sprinkle it across the threshold. Like fish on a line. What made you call us tonight?" "You said true American ghost tales," she said. "I don't know what's American about it. Ghosts don't carry passports. But I figured if the country is gone, now keep the water and the lights and the lost boys, then maybe the country can hear about M. Maybe hearing's a kind of holding." The line thinned to thread. Then the knocking came down the wire, so clearly the VU meters bounced. 3 soft, 1 hard. It didn't come from her porch. It came from the phone line, the way a song comes from a record groove. Miles let the silence breathe 3 seconds, enough to make listeners lean in, not enough to make the station dump to PSA. "Ms. Boudreau?" She hissed. They at the door again. They're playing the tune. A new sound bled in a whistle, high and thin. Etienne's melody without lungs. The board didn't like it. The waveform flattened and jittered. Under the whistle, water moving around wood. "Don't open it," Miles said, useless as a man shouting at a screen in a haunted house. The sentence cost him nothing and changed less. "I ain't," Claudine said, and Miles believed her. "But they brought a 4th tonight." "You said 3, he said. "I did," she said. "This one ain't a light. This one's a voice. It's saying your name." The studio swallowed itself. Nadia mouthed, "No," and shook her head so hard her headset slipped. The ceiling drip fattened and fell square on the on-air bulb housing, sizzling faintly. The light held. "What does it say?" he asked, because the point of a ritual is to perform it even when it fails. "It says," Claudine repeated carefully, as if reading off an index card, "Miles Gray, we got something that belongs to you. Come help us lift it." Something shifted in the puddle as reflection, the cypress knees resolving into metal rails, like the ones that ran behind the old brick factory that became their station. For a half second, the puddle was a window into the alley out back. Rain gloss, a trash bin, the suggestion of a man-shaped shadow with a trooper's cap tilted down. Then the surface broke into rings, and the studio ceiling came back. "Ms. Boudreau, can you put the phone on speaker and step away from the door?" Miles said, making his voice pure procedure. "Describe what you see without touching the knob." "Lanterns pressing up against the glass," she said, the candle flame pushing back like a tired saint. And her breath hitched. "There's handprints coming up in the fog. 3, 4. One looks small enough to be Etienne's. The last," she sucked air, "the last got a badge ring pressed in the palm. like somebody palmed a coin too long. Miles's throat closed around a name he did not say. Row. The meters leapt. A splash thundered so close it clipped. Claudine shouted anger, more than fear. "Non, you ain't talking me. You ain't." The call sheared sideways into static. Not white noise, wet noise. Bubbles. The sideways rush of water poured over a prow. Under it, a second line glided in, a man's voice with the grain of a weathered post. Calm, official, resigned. He spoke as if reading the end of a report. "Caller terminated," the voice said, so plain the hairs on Miles's wrist rose. "Coordinates received? 333. The line went dead. Miles didn't move until the meter lights steadied like heart monitors finding a rhythm. He lifted his head and felt the entire building leaning, as if listening to itself. Nadia's phone lit and vibrated. She glanced down, went gray. She flipped the screen to the glass. The station as old emergency wire, a leftover from AM days that sometimes caught NOA traffic had pushed a text, downly bulleted into their internal paging app. Time-stamped 3:33 a.m. Despite the actual time. Marine Unit Dispatch, Terrebonne Parish. Unidentified female caller. Open line. Water audible. Ping triangulation unreliable. Last clear words. Not taking me. Result. Line terminated. How Nadia began. "The building," Miles said. It sounded like a diagnosis. Or an alibi. "It pulls things through." He thumbed the master slider down and brought up the bumper for a station ID. The music came in low and mournful, the sound of a bow across a wet rope. Listeners would hear a haunting. He heard a pattern. He wiped the board again. The puddle was ordinary, now lukewarm, tasteless. But on the edge of the Caltrans report, the water had puckered the paper into a shape like a map delta, a branching of roots and canals. He pressed his palm to it, and when he lifted his hand, a faint badgering circle ghosted his skin where the water had dried. "Next is the nurse," Nadia said through the talkback, voice too calm. A raft lashed together in a storm. From the asylum tour. She left a voicemail during the call. She says she doesn't want to go into the building alone. She says she's hearing. Patience. "Patch her," Miles said. The on-air light held. The storm tightened its belt. Somewhere below them, in the crawl space where old conduits ran, a trickle of water found a new path and began to write. He opened line 1. "Welcome to the haunting hour," he said, and felt the hour open toward him like a mouth. The bumper came up bow hair, catching a single low note, and Miles wrote it down with the care of a surgeon, lowering a scalpel. "This is the haunting hour," he said, the on-air bulb warming his cheek. "If you were with us, you heard Claudine from Terrebonne Parish. We hope she's safe." Our next caller asked not to go into her story alone. "She's outside the old Blackwood State Hospital Inn." He glanced at Nadia's screen. "Hartsbridge County, a decommissioned psychiatric facility turned historical tour site. Line 1, you're with us." A woman's voice, clear but frayed at the edges. "This is Mara Vick, night guide. I do the flashlight tours. I could use the company." Nadia had already pulled 3 tabs. A Preservation Society page, a 2004 closure notice, and a forum post with the cheerful doom of Urbex kids. She put a finger to the glass. "Live. What's happening tonight, Miss Vick?" Miles asked. "Same things as always," Mara said, and the way she said it made always feel like a threat. "Doors that close without hinges. Gurneys that move without hands. But tonight there's order to it." Order. The word pricked something in Miles, an echo of the report, voice that had cut through Claudine's call. He sat forward. "I'm at the staff entrance," Mara said. "My coworker left early. He said the patients were rowdy." That's his joke, the recorded patients. The board plays these old PA announcements every hour to sell a vibe to the tour groups. The tape's supposed to be off after 10. It's midnight. What are you hearing? Miles said. Mara held her phone out, and a room emerged, a heavy, tiled quiet that remembered soap and screaming. Under it, a transistor crackle, and then a man's voice filtered through an old speaker. Attention. Code Gray in Ward C Restraint Team report. Visitors stand clear. The system popped and hissed. Then, calmly, as if reading the weather. Time, 3:33. Nadia's gaze cut to the studio clock. The digits stayed loyal to 12:49, then glitched for the length of a heartbeat. I know it's silly, Mara said, shame in the shape of a laugh, because it's a loop. But the loop isn't supposed to know what time it is. Where are you now? Miles asked. I've just buzzed into the hydrotherapy wing, she whispered. Tiles like teeth. The tubs are enamel, stained where the drains were. It smells like phenol and rust. The lights are well. You know that flicker people fake for effect? We don't have to fake it. The ballast is old and mean. A drip tapped Miles's board, a sympathetic response from the ceiling that made the Caltrans print ripple like skin. He slid the paper aside and found his palm ringed faintly where the badge circle had marked him. The skin there tingled, as if it had been kissed by electricity. Why take the call inside? He asked, keeping his tone practical so the listeners would think of protocols, not panic. You could tell us from the parking lot. Because it matters where I stand when I say certain names, Mara said, as if that were obvious. There are places in there that act like switchboards. They connect. Sometimes you get a clearer line to the living if you re-standing in the right dead place. The word connected him to the Bayou Ferry points, and behind that, to a road shoulder where glass had learned to face. Nadia wrote on a post-it and pressed it to the pane. Nexus architecture equals hallways, water, glass. Mara's breath caught. The shoes are here. What shoes? Miles asked, though he knew. Outside Ward C. Her voice dropped to the size of a throat. Men's black, laces tucked in. I left them there 2 weeks ago when my coworker, went through that door as a joke during a private after-hours tour. Door shut. Lock stuck. We couldn't get it open. When it finally did, there wasn't anyone to get out. A brittle laugh. I say left, but we only found them after, lined up neat, like a doctor taking inventory. He pictured them, paired, polite, waiting. Mara moved. Her footfalls made soft wet syllables against the tile. Her phone mic clipped as the PA clicked again. Code Gray resolved, the voice said, authority thinning out to static. Admit complete. Gray Miles. Broadcasting unit to observation. Nadia's pen stopped. She lifted it, set it down, lifted it again like a cut wire trying to spark. Mara, Miles said softly, did the tape just say my name? The system is not connected to any network, she said, fiercely practical now that fear might loosen. It's local only. There's no live input. I had maintenance pull the cartridge last week because it started inserting phrases it shouldn't know. They found only dead oxide and a label from the 90s. The machine shouldn't be talking at all. Can you show us Ward C? He asked, because part of every spell is saying yes to the next impossible step. Okay, she said, and he heard keys chime, heard them answer each other like a small wind chime. I'm at the door. It's 7 layers of paint over steel. There's a viewing panel. You know, those one-way mirrors? You can't stop yourself from tilting to catch your own face. I always check. Tonight, a pause. Tonight, it doesn't show me. It shows the parking lot. Not here. Somewhere else. A brick wall with a painted loading dock number. 11. A dumpster. It's raining. Her voice thinned. Is it raining where you are? It is, Miles said. She exhaled like a candle surrendering. Okay, then it's looking at you. The studio window, heavy as confession glass, fogged from the inside in a slow, pearled creep. Nadia wiped a sleeve and left a streak. Behind Miles, the old dot matrix printer coughed a jaw unhinging and fed a new sheet. Blackwood State Hospital, admission form. The paper smelled like cold ink and something chemical. Fields had autofilled themselves with bad typewriter ghosts. Name, Gray Miles. Reason for admission. Broadcast-induced parasomnia, apparitional auditory. Overlap. Date time. October 31st, 1987, 3:33. Mara, he said, not trusting his own breath. What else is at the door? Stethoscope marks on the glass, she said softly. Beats per minute in fog. Someone listens for a heart and leaves circles behind. She pressed her own stethoscope to the pane. He could hear the rubber squeak, and then a sound that didn't belong in a radio studio. A heartbeat, faint and stubborn through an inch of old glass, coming not from the hall, but from the room beyond the door. Mara? Another voice said. Another line began to ring on the board. Line 5, unknown. Before Miles had touched it, he hadn't announced the number. He hadn't even seen it light. Nadia's fingers hovered, then dropped. She patched it. Mara? The new voice repeated. A man's, breathy with the way sound behaves in long corridors. Don't listen to her. I never left this place. Mara inhaled like she'd been struck. Devin? I'm at the payphone at the end of E corridor, the man said. The receiver is sticky. It keeps giving me outside without quarters, but only one number goes through. A beat. Your show. Mara's phone scrabbled. She was moving, keys and breath and the wheel on a badge clip. There is no payphone in E corridor anymore, she said, a professional rebuttal that indicated grief had not made her forget her job. It was removed in 2002. It's here, the man whispered. It's new. Nadia threw him a look that was half terror, half producer's delight radio gold with a serrated edge. Miles opened his hand over the admission form to steady it. His marked palm a faint ring where water had dried, aligned with the circular hospital stamp at the bottom. For a reverent second, his skin and the document made a seal. Devin, Miles said, splitting his attention between channels, the way a man splits between two horses at a gallop. Tell us what you see. Linoleum. The sort that always looks wet. A mural at the far end, children holding kites. It's too bright for midnight. The fluorescents hum. He coughed. Someone's coming down the hall, bare feet. You can hear the slap. They're slow. They're patient. Mara's breath on line 1 trembled. Don't open anything, she said, fierce and thin. Stay put. The PA clicked her, misfired a rash of syllables. Visitor hours, observation, gray, admit. Then cleanly, as if a new station had cut in. All staff please note. Cornfield perimeter breach. Ward perimeter breach. Crossroads compromised. The word cornfield loosened a dry sound in the studio speakers. A papery hiss that didn't belong to rain. It ran up Miles's spine like stalks rubbing together. A new line 2 lit and waited with the patience of an open field. Mara, Miles said. What's in Ward C if it isn't? If it isn't patience? The quiet ones, she said. The ones who never needed restraints. The ones who listened. They put them there because they didn't make trouble, and the staff wanted somewhere to put quiet that wasn't their own heads. A ragged laugh. Funny thing. Quiet becomes pressure when you lock it up. Devin, Miles said. Are the feet still coming? They stopped outside the booth, he whispered. I can see toes. Gray, like if concrete had toes. They're waiting for me to hang up. Then don't, Miles said, but it was prayer, not policy. Mara reached Ward C's lock. The phone mic captured the dry chuff of keys and the meat click of a cylinder. If I open this, she said, it will balance something. Doors like to be equal. One closes, one opens. That's how the night stays upright. Don't, Devin and Miles said together. She laughed again, the sound a single loose thread in a tight cloth. I'm not opening it. I'm putting my eye to the slot. Silence. Then, low, there's a mirror in there, but it's the wrong way round. It shows an empty radio studio with a red light labeled standby. I can see a coffee cup with a chip, a printout with a water stain shaped like a river delta. The chair is empty. The headphones, she inhaled. The headphones are on the table, but they're breathing. Nadia's eyes shone in the glass. She lifted her headset away from her ears, just enough to reassure herself they were not inflating. Devin? Miles said. On line 5, the man's breath shuddered. He's putting his hand on the glass, he whispered. The one with the badge ring. He's asking me to hang up so he can talk in my place. The admission printer rattled again. A second page ribboned out. Patient belongings inventory badge unclaimed. Shoebox water damaged. Audio cassette, The Haunting Our Pilot. Date time, October 31st, 1987, 3:33. Miles felt the building lean, very slightly, toward the east, as if something were physically tugging on the old power conduits in the crawl space. The board murmured with low-cycle hum-knot interference, but the intimate sound of a large animal thinking. Nadia, he said, to anchor himself in the world of jobs and knobs, hold line 2 and don't answer it. Whatever's there can wait. She nodded, one click, and set her hand over the button like a mother over a child's chest. Mara, he said, step back from the door. Devin, stay on the line and describe the hall. We're going to get someone to you. The NOA wire chimed their internal ep again without permission. Another block of ugly text, timestamped 3:33 a.m. regardless of the clock. Hartsbridge County Blackwood site, unverified internal page. Code Gray. Gray, Miles broadcast to observation. Note, unauthorized relay captured on civilian frequency. Mara moved. Her steps agreed with gravity again. Backed away, she said. I'm at the nurse's station. There's a ledger here we keep for show a prop. It's full of names folks signed before tours, so they feel part of the story. Tonight, it's full of the same handwriting over and over. The same signature. Gray. Dates go backwards. Devin exhaled like a man surfacing. The feet are gone, he whispered. I think he stopped. He left his shoes outside. They're lined up neat. Walk, Mara said, command cutting through her fear, the professional taking charge. E corridor turns left then right. There's an exit by laundry. Go. Devin went. His footfalls became a second heartbeat to the studio's electrical rhythm. Okay, I see the mural. Kids and kites. The kites, they're... He made a small sound. The tails are radio tape. Spliced. They're knotted with leader. The show's bumper curled at the edge of Miles's mind like an emergency blanket. He didn't touch it. He stayed with the raw air. Mara, he said, what do you need from us? Witness, she said simply. If I'm wrong, I'll know it because you're here. If I'm right, I won't be alone when I find out. A hiss passed through the lines. Not wind this time, but dry plants rubbing together. Line 2 blinked a steady, patient green. Out in Iowa, someone with a field full of scarecrows was about to call. Stay with us, Miles told both their voices. We're going to the Midwest after the break. But we're not leaving you. He hit the bumper softly, so the music rose like mist, and not like a curtain. The on-air light stayed hot. He could feel it on his skin, the way he'd felt the badge ring printed there, the way he now felt the outline of an admission stamp where there should be none. He slid the fader down a half-inch and spoke into the talkback so only Nadia could hear. Patch Iowa next, he said. Keep Blackwood live in the bed. Nadia's nod was small and violent. The printer clicked once more and went quiet, like a throat finishing a sentence. Outside, the storm gathered its scattered notes into a single long chord. Inside, the building listened to itself breathe. The bumper thinned to a whisper of bow hair and tape hiss. Nadia kept Mara, Blackwood, and Devon, corridor, riding under the music at a breath as volume proof they were still there, though their halls had gone quiet. Miles took line 2, the steady patient green that had blinked since the PA said, "Cornfield perimeter breach. This is the haunting hour," he said, steady. "Who's with us?" A boy's voice, trying to be a man's. "Owen Pike, near Story City, Iowa. I can't get the sheriff to come out. They say it's just wind." Nadia scribbled, "Pike, Story County Farm." She flashed a thumbs-up local scanners online. "What's happening, Owen?" "First off, I listen every night. It helps me stay awake running the pivot at midnight," he said in a rush, then checked himself as if spending too much breath would steal the oxygen from the house behind him. "We've got scarecrows in all 4 corners. Dad puts VHS tape across the rows to keep birds off. The tape sings when wind's right. Tonight, it's talking instead." Behind his voice, Miles heard dry things moving, a papery hiss like 2 hands rubbing straw. The studio speakers caught it and added a faint, sympathetic rattle from somewhere in the ductwork, as if the building had stored summer in its bones and was letting it out. "What does it say?" Miles asked. "It says your show," Owen said, embarrassed by his own superstition. "I heard your theme whistled, and my granddad's cough, and my mom humming that church song she hums when she thinks nobody is listening." He swallowed. "Mom's asleep. Dad's on a night run south, stuck behind an overturned semi on I-35. My sister's at a friend's. I'm alone." Nadia's hands moved like a dealer laying down cards. I-35 incident confirmed. .feed. Wind advisory. NOA. The timestamp on both made the hair on Miles's arms lift. 333 nested in the log codes like a signature. "Where are you in the house?" Miles asked, knowing where mattered. Place had been the common denominator. Junctions behaved like machines. "Kitchen," Owen said. "Back window. It faces the north quarter. There's a scarecrow on the edge of the beans." "Yeah, beans. Sorry, we rotated." "He's closer than he was at dusk." The phone shifted. The mic took a rectangle of night and tried to draw it. "The VHS tape is strung to the T-posts. We use it because we ran out of Mylar. Dad says crows hate shiny. The tape's flutterin' and it's mackin' words." "Read the words to me," Miles said. Owen breathed fog onto glass 3 states away, and the studio window fogged in sympathy, a faint breath print rounding itself on the inside of the pane. "It's crooked like a first grader trying to write in the air," Owen said. "Miles Gray, call now." Then it snaps and it says, "Wait." The house settled around him, a wood body sighing. It says, "Cornfield perimeter breach." Under his voice, the Blackwood PA bled, a twin message in miniature, like 2 radios tuned to the same wound. Nadia kept it bedded under the Iowa line, but Miles heard it anyway, a chorus of administrative haunting stitching geography. "All staff please note, cornfield perimeter breach." "What about the scarecrow?" Miles said softly, "Describe him for me." P.S. wearing Dad's old work shirt and a highway jacket somebody donated to the church rummage state patrol type. Owen said. We stuffed his chest with seed corn bags and newspaper. I used the classifieds with jobs circled. His head is a burlap sack. We drew eyes. He don't look like nothing in daylight. But now Owen's voice flattened, like a man watching a dog cross a highway. He moved. How far? 3 rows, Owen said. No, 4. No wind big enough for that. The tape is slack. It looks like it's breathing. Miles pressed his palm to the admission form from Blackwood still on the desk, grounding himself in paper. The ring the water had left in chapter. 2 fit the circular hospital stamp, as if sealing it had been the form as job all along. He eased his hand away, and watched the ink dry back into its confidence. "Owen," he said, procedural calm, "you're going to do 2 things for us. 1. Turn all the inside lights off except the lamp behind you. 2. Put the phone on speaker and set it by the windowsill. Don't open the door." "Yes, sir," Owen said, and the "sir" made him sound smaller. The papery hiss swelled as interior lights clicked off. The Studios exit sign stabilized in the corner of Miles' SI, as if sharing a circuit with the farm's breaker. The house's refrigerator motor went silent. The night rushed in. "It got closer when I turned the light off," Owen whispered. "It likes the dark." "Dark is a medium," Miles said before he could stop himself. Nadia turned, eyebrows up. "You're editorializing." But it mattered. They had water, glass, tape. Now they had Shadow, another carrier. "What time is on your stove clock?" Miles asked. 3:33, Owen said without looking, then scoffed. "No, that's stupid. We lost power during a storm last month, and it's wrong. It always says 3:33. Gotta reset it. On my phone, it's 12:57. The studio clock blinked between them like a coin. 12:57, clean. 3:33, a flash of the wrong face. Blackwood's PA coughed, tiny 3:33 for punctuation. "Describe the rows," Miles said, knowing it wasn't filler. The geometry of the place mattered. Hallways had made sense in the asylum. Rows were the asylum's country cousin guides for a mind. "North quarter runs straight to the windbreak," Owen said. 500 feet of corn on the right, beans left. End row is tamped flat from the pivot. When the wind's from the west, the corn sings like 100 paper bags. When it's from the north, you don't hear it till it's right on you. Which way tonight? North. Okay, Miles said. Then you won't hear it moving until it's at the window. So you stay back. Nadia lifted her screen. 911 call log. Multiple trespasser in field reports. Nitrogen monoxide units. Available. The county was busy with the I-35 mess. The line between human emergency and whatever this was had softened. "I'm going to turn on the yard light," Owen said. "Just the pole one. It'll hit the end row." "Do it," Miles said, though every superstition in him preferred unlit things to stay unlit. The relay thumped through the phone. A sodium halo erupted, and in that weak, yellow wash the scarecrow stepped. It didn't lurch or jump. Miles heard it the way a cut happens in a movie between frames. They're in one position, then in another. It had crossed 6 rows. The burlap head cocked toward the house. The tape along its shoulders trembled and whispered Miles. Miles, gray, in a language of plastic and wind. "There's something on its hand," Owen said. "We used a glove. Dad said not bare sticks, 'cause it looked cheap. The glove's got a ring worn in, like whoever had it held a coin too long. Or a badge." The printer in the studio chirped and spit a single line on an old, toothy sheet. County Extension Bulletin Field Observation. Gray. MyLES 333. Admit to watch. No header. No trailing text. Just the sentence. Like a nail pushed into paper. From Blackwood, low under the bed of audio. Observation Ward online. From the bayou, impossibly, a thin slosh as a ceiling pipe somewhere in the building found a leak, as if water could attend a cornfield. "Owen, is there anyone else on your property?" Miles said. "No," he said. Then, "Wait." His breath hard. "There's a second one. Other corner. That one's wearing a state trooper's cap. Dad bought it at the rummage for $1, 'cause it was funny. It ain't funny now." Nadia's face pinched. Row again. The badge ring printing itself across landscapes. On the board, line 1, Mara hissed, then steadied. She whispered, barely on mic. "The ledger is filling itself." Paper turned in her hands. "The names go back to 1987. The handwriting doesn't change." "Owen," Miles said carefully. "The way you talk to someone balancing with one foot in a river. Have you ever signed a guest book at a motel?" "What?" Owen said, confused. "Good. Keep him in the ridiculous." "Yeah, once." "Okay," Miles said. "If this thing asks you to sign anything, even if it's with a flashlight, with your breath on glass, you don't. You keep your name as a thing you choose to say, not a thing it can write down." "Okay," Owen said faintly. "Okay." The scarecrows were 2 fence posts from the yard, one on each side of the back walk, as if the house were the mouth of a lane and the crows were gatekeepers. The tape fluttered and jangled like a tape leader in an old deck hunting for play. The sodium light sizzled. Moths discovered heat. "They're not really moving," Owen said, as if saying it could reset the night. "They're just closer. Things that don't move, moving between looks," Miles said. "That's their trick everywhere. Glass, water, tape, paper, frames. Listen," Owen whispered. "Can you hear that? It's the wind chime. No, we don't have chimes. That's my sister's mouth harp. She keeps it on the porch. It's playing by itself." The harp thrummed, a cheap metal twang shaped into a tune that had no business being in Iowa. Etienne's whistle from the bayou, the melody migrating like a disease. Under it, from Blackwood, the PA delivered a new fragment, visitor hours extended, broadcasting unit to Corn Perimeter. The systems were talking to one another, or one thing was talking with many mouths. "Don't open the door," Miles said, the ritual now law. "I won't," Owen said, but there was a weight to the words, a physics, and Miles heard the old human hinge. It always wants to see if the danger is as big as it sounds. A knock came from the back door. 3 soft, 1 hard cadence exported from Louisiana into an Iowa night. "Who's there?" Owen asked before he remembered not to. "Don't ask that," Miles said quickly. "It isn't who." Through the phone, the kitchen took on a church cold. The window fogged from the inside with the prints of many small hands, child height, grown height, a hand with a badge ring. The scarecrows faced the glass politely, their burlap mouths puffing slightly with each false breath. "Miles," Nadia said through talkback, eyes pinned to her emergency pager, "I'm getting a farm advisory, but it's pushing through our NOA channel. That shouldn't be possible. She read, voice tinny in his ear. "All agricultural personnel, please note, rows act as corridors. Keep names off glass. Do not engage at 3:33. She swallowed. "It signs off with our call letters." "Okay," Miles told the night, which was not the same as telling Owen. "Okay. I think it wants me to help lift something," Owen whispered. "Like the lady said, like a net. It wants me in the field to pull with it." "Do not go in the field," Miles said, the producer in him and the human aligned at last. "If you have salt, pour a line along the door. If you have iron, lay a poker across the threshold. Turn the yard light off. Don't feed it shadows to hide in." Owen moved quickly, not because he was brave, but because he was scared enough to be obedient. He set the phone down. The mic caught a shush of salt, the chime of iron. The harp on the porch stuttered. The scarecrows held. The tape on their shoulders tried to write his name, and failed, making only a ragged M that fluttered, then unstitched itself back to ribbon. "Okay," he said, breathless. "Okay, light off." Dark landed and took its shape. For one long second, there was nothing. Then the yard pole popped and flared of its own accord sodium, returning without a switch, and when it did, the scarecrows were against the glass, faces tilted, burlap pressing flush. One hand pattered the window in a rain of seeds from its cuff, and lower down a smaller hand slid alongside child-sized, flour sack fingers dragging. The badgering hand left a damp circle, crisp as a stamp. Nadia reached blindly for Miles's wrist and found it, just for the human electrical certainty of pulse. "Owen," Miles said, "step back. We're here." Whir! A third sound entered the heavy motor of a truck on gravel. Headlights swung. The scarecrows reset, one row back, like an edit put in kindly by a cautious film editor. A male voice shouted flat Midwest vowels, furious, the way a man shouts when he believes in problems he can shoot. Hey, you get off my property. Dad, Owen gasped, then laughed a laugh at her. Dad's home. Dad sees him, right? The truck door banged. The motor idled. A pair of boots crunched. The scarecrows were cloth and sticks again. Perfectly legal scarecrows enjoying an American night. From Blackwood, Evan whispered, as if reporting a weather change down a long hallway. On my end, the feet stopped. Someone's humming. From the pager, the NOA feed pushed a terse after. It's wrong clock. Field event. Observer arrived. Status. Deferred. Time. 3:30. Owen's father knocked. On the back window. Not the cadence, just human impatience. Owen lifted the latch. Miles felt it all the way in his own shoulder socket and nearly shouted, but the door opened only enough to pass a body's worth of air in. You don't open to the field, the father said, harsh with adrenaline and embarrassment, as if anger could be a dam. You call me. You call a man, not a radio. He stared past Owen into the house, at the phone on speaker, at the sound of Miles's voice in his kitchen, and his mouth did a small, not pleased shape. Turn that off. Sir, Miles said, and tried to make his voice the oldest friend in a new room. Leave it on for now, if you don't mind. We're logging this. We'll keep you company. We don't need company, the father said, but he didn't reach for the phone. He looked at the glass. He lifted his right hand and pressed his palm next to the badgering circle left by the burlap glove. His hand was big and warm and human, and it steamed the pain honestly. For a second, the two circles made a figure 8. The scarecrows, 2 rows back, inclined their heads to the gesture as if it were a bow exchanged at a duel. Then the VHS tape slithered loose from a T-post, rattled in the wind, and wrapped itself around one scarecrow's throat, a ridiculous scarf that shouldn't look like a noose, but did. The tape spoke once garbled, observation gray admit, and snapped. Everything relaxed, the way things do when a taut story lets go of its rope. The house exhaled. The on-air light warmed. The printer went mercifully quiet. You'll come back and sign that guest book tomorrow, the father said, not to Miles. To Owen, meaning the church rummage, the town ledger, any normal paper. He squeezed the boy's shoulder. We'll fix the tape. We'll set a real fence. We'll put up a radio of our own. He shut the door. The lock turned. The kitchen returned to its beige. Owen picked up the phone. They ain't gone, he said, without fear now, just bone-tired knowing. They just stepped back a row. We're not gone either, Miles said. He looked at the board where Mara and Bevan still lived under the bed. We're going to Salem after the break, but keep this line open. If anything changes if they write again, you tell us what they spell. They spell names, Owen said. That's what they want. To get you to say your name at the window. To get you to sign. To make you come out and lift. Don't sign, Miles said. Don't lift. Okay, Owen said. Okay, I won't. Miles eased the bumper up like a curtain over a sleeping dog. The dry hiss of corn bled into the low hum of hospital halogens under the music. And for a second, the two places sat perfectly stacked, rows over corridors, scarecrows over patients, glass over glass. The on-air bulb held hot. The building drew a long breath. After the break, Miles told the dark, shadows of Salem. The bumper faded, cello trailing like smoke up a chimney. Mara and Bevan still lived under the bed of sound whisper quiet, their presence threaded in the mix. Owen's line hummed faintly 2 corn rows waiting, scarecrows listening. The board looked less like a console now, and more like a nerve bundle, wires conducting hauntings across states. Miles drew in a slow breath, let it out through his nose, and lifted line 6. "You're on the haunting hour?" A woman's voice, crisp and measured. "Dr. Rebecca Hawley, Salem, Massachusetts. I'm a historian, professor of early American religions, and I think my house doesn't want me here anymore." Nadia's hands were already moving. "Hollow, Salem State, department listing confirmed." A quick flick. Her public faculty profile American Puritanism, witch trial primary sources. Another tab open. Fire investigation, Essex County, year-old, unsolved cause. Nadia underlined it and gave Miles a look, for shadow. "What are you experiencing, Dr. Hall?" Miles asked, voice all courtesy, all ritual. "Knocks at 3:33, she said. "Every night for the last month. Whispering through my vents. I thought it was pipes. Old houses carry sound strangely. But last week, I started finding scratches on my walls. Letters, names. The studio's exit sign pulsed once. The printer groaned awake, rolled an inch of feed, then stopped, as if to remind them it could. "What names?" Miles asked. She hesitated. "Not my students, not neighbors. Names from trial transcripts. Ann Puditer, Bridget Bishop, women who died at Gallows Hill, and a sharp breath, yours." Nadia looked up, eyes hard and wide at the same time. "It's carved in my study," Dr. Hawley continued, "not etched scratched deep into plaster. I keep painting over it. It comes back. Miles Gray, over and over. The letters too neat for rodents, too deliberate for water damage. The studio's window fogged from the inside again, letters trying to press forward. Nadia wiped a sleeve. For an instant, the streak spelled M, then broke apart into condensation. "Describe what happens when you hear the whispers," Miles said. "Careful." "They chant," Hawley said. "Sometimes scripture, sometimes fragments of the women's own depositions, sometimes just the word name over and over. They call me by mine. They want me to open the door when the knocks start. They want me to stand by the mirror at the landing and say my name out loud." Miles's hand went instinctively to the corner of the Blackwood admission form, still on the desk, where his name was typed like a diagnosis. Don't sign. Don't say. Don't lift. The rule echoing from Owen's farm. "What happens if you don't?" "They escalate," she said. "Last night, the scratches appeared while I was in the room. I watched them crawl across the plaster like a stylus dragging. I thought it might stop if I confronted it, so I shouted. I asked what they wanted. And they wrote, 'Next broadcast.'" The studio speakers gave a low feedback moan, not electrical but vocal, as if another throat pressed against the diaphragm. Nadia muted auxiliary lines, but the moan remained, woven into the air. "Where are you in the house right now?" Miles asked. "In my study. The walls are lined with court documents, facsimiles. I thought maybe my work attracted something. But these are just paper. Paper shouldn't breathe." The microphone picked up a subtle flutter pages turning in a room where no one touched them. The sound layered with the Blackwood P.S. distant crackle and Owen's dry corn hiss, each haunting rhyming with the other. "Mara," whispered Devon faintly from line 1, barely audible under Salem. "The shoes just moved." Nadia stiffened. Miles held up a finger. "Wait." "Dr. Hawley," Miles said. "Tell me what's on the wall right now." Her breathing hitched. Letters again. "Gray. Miles. Admit." The printer in the studio convulsed, rolled 3 sheets, stopped. Nadia yanked one free and paled. It was a court transcript, 17th century font, but hot off a dot matrix. The line underlined in ink. "Confess your name, and the court will have mercy." Dr. Hawley cried out suddenly. The phone rattled. "The mirror. The mirror's moving. It isn't showing me. It's showing a room with a red-on air light." Miles's throat tightened. "Is there a chair?" "Yes," she whispered. "Empty." headphones on the desk, breathing. A cold burst moved through the studio, as though confirming her view. Nadia's coffee cup rattled. "Dr. Hawley," Miles said, "do not speak your name into that mirror." "They're chanting now," she said, voice trembling. The mic caught a chorus of women's voices, layered, whispering his name, whispering hers, demanding, "Name, name, name." "Hold," Miles said. He tapped the console, grounding himself in sliders and knobs. "Listeners, what you're hearing is not a recording. It's happening live. Stay with us." The chant cut off. Silence pooled thick. Then a single woman's voice, clearer than the rest, sharp with Salem's old grief. "Miles Gray." The studio clock blinked 3:33. The printer shrieked and spit another line. "Fire report residence of Dr. Rebecca Hawley, undetermined CAUSE, 3:33. The timestamp wasn't to tonight's date. It was tomorrow's. Dr. Hall gasped. "The mirror," she broke off. A roar of static filled the line. Not electronic, but like a crowd shouting at once. Then silence. Nadia refreshed her scanner feed. The screen went white and displayed a single block of text with no source. "Residential fire, Salem. Units en route. Mara." Devin whispered from under the bed. "Something's burning in the ward. The paint's blistering." Owen's farm line crackled. The scarecrows smelled like smoke. The building itself gave a long groan, the kind wood makes when heat moves through it. Miles touched the on-air bulb. It was too hot to keep his fingers on. "Listeners," he said into the mic, his voice threading through fire and corn and corridor. "We may be witnessing an event unfold across more than one place." The printer spit one last slip. "Admit Gray, Miles. Observation, 3:33. Nadia mouthed, 'We need to cut.' But Miles didn't. He leaned toward the mic, ritual carrying him forward. "Stay with us." After the break Motel 13, the bumper rose like smoke, and for a moment, the studio smelled of both wet roses and burning plaster. The bumper returned as a low, steady bow, note less a song than a pulse. Under it, the board still carried the faint lives of other places. Mara in Blackwood, Devin somewhere between feet and phones, Owen with his scarecrows stepped back a row, and Salem an ember on the line. The studio felt like the inside of a switchboard, cords patched, lights winking, voices traveling. Miles leaned toward the mic. "You're with the haunting hour. After Salem, we'd promised you Motel 13. The printer coughed like a smoker and fed a single strip. "Lodging assignment. Broadcast unit Motel 13 vacancy distance. 13 minutes time." 3:33, Nadia mouthed no, already shaking her head. "We're not doing a bit," she said into talkback. "Producer first, friend a half breath behind. We stay in the room. We keep the lines." "We can keep the lines," Miles said, surprising himself with how calm he sounded. "We take them with us." He lifted a small field recorder from the rack-old habit from his early days, doing remotes in fairgrounds and car lots, and slotted in a fresh card. Nadia's hand hovered over his wrist, then withdrew. She pushed the bench fader up to lay a bed of low instrumental under the air. A long music cue to cover an elevator ride through the dark. She patched the board so the studio could ride shotgun. Mara, Devin, Owen all still there, braided beneath the floor of the world. "Patch me on IFB," he said. "You talk in my ear. You cut if this feels wrong." He meant if this feels worse, but the night had taught them both to ration adjectives. The on-air light warmed his cheek like a warning and a benediction. He palmed the Blackwood admission form folded once, slipped it into his jacket. He didn't know why until he knew. Paper had weight in this story. Paper argued back. He left the studio with the recorder on, Nadia's voice a tether in his ear. The hallway fluorescence blinked as if pretending to be film. The lobby smelled faintly of wet roses and coffee and something electrical hesitating. Outside, the city had the wet shine of a tongue. His car recognized his hand and unlocked itself with a sigh. The pager on the passenger seat vibrated and lit with a map that didn't belong to its firmware. No UI, no brand, just a monochrome, Arrow and Motel 1313MIN. He drove. Nadia rode in his ear, steady as a metronome. Mara's line is quiet but live. Devin says the mural kites are turning tape tails pointing west. Owen's farm is holding at 2 rows. Salem is off the net. Fire crews dispatched. Copy, Miles said. The word copy comforted him. Copy makes a world into paper. Paper makes a world holdable. The city thinned. The industrial belt took over sheet metal warehouses with sodium halos, self-storage slats, a brick factory with a painted loading dock number 11. He recognized it. The mirror in Blackwood had shown him this wall. An off-ramp delivered him into a small constellation of roadside motels, the kind that looked temporary, even decades on. The sign for Motel 13 buzzed a vacancy in red tubes that blinked. Vacank, then V, can Y, then held vacancy like a stubborn breath. 13 minutes on the nose, Nadia said, watching his location populate on a map that only sometimes admitted he existed. Not possible with those lights. But here we are. He parked under a lamp that made moths write ellipses in air. The office door chimed a bell. It didn't ring so much as admit a note, as if it had a ledger for sounds. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner over damp carpet, a chemistry of denial. A clerk sat behind glass. The glass was unhelpfully clean. The clerk's eyes had that milk-glazed look that old cataracts or cheap lenses give. Diffusion filters built into the body. He smiled a smile he'd once practiced and now performed on instinct. Checking in, the clerk said. I didn't say, Miles began. Checking in, the clerk repeated, same cadence, same warmth, like an echo cribbed from a previous room. Nadia's breath sharpened in his ear. I'm here, she said. You don't have to fill the silence. What name? The clerk asked pleasantly. Miles thought about Owen and glass and the rules. Don't sign. Don't say. He touched the recorder to his throat and said, No name. Cash. The clerk nodded as if that were a known setting. He pulled a guest ledger from under the counter-reel paper, cloth-bound, the kind that sales reps used to give businesses as if permanence could be gifted. He opened to tonight's page. It was already full. The same handwriting filled every line. Gray. The dates fell backward and forward 1987, 2004, last week, tomorrow each with the same neat slopes, the M like a heart with a thorn through it. I'm not signing that, Miles said. No signing, the clerk agreed, and turned the book anyway, pen cocked. Nadia said in his ear, as carefully as he'd ever heard her say anything. Walk away from the ledger. He did. The clerk smiled, wider. Room 13, he said, and slid a key in a fob across the counter. It wasn't a card. It was a real key, long and cheap and chromed, stamped 13 like a dog tag. When Miles touched it, the metal felt body warm. Is there a different room? Miles asked, though of course there wasn't. Room 13, the clerk repeated, helpful as a taped loop. Check out at 3:33. Miles pocketed the key and kept his hands in his pockets so he wouldn't drag his name through air. He stepped back outside. The walkway ran in a U of doors 13 at the turn. The gutters held a small, self-contained rain that did not match the sky. Drips fell from a seam and pattered his shoulder like a dog's counting paw. He walked past 9, 10, 11, 12. The peepholes watched like pupil-less eyes. He stopped at 13. The door had a lower gap big enough for a hand. He could see a line of thin light in there, sway-backed, humming. Nadia, you don't have to go in. We brought the lines to a door. he said. If I don't open it, it opens anyway. Someday, somewhere somebody else will open it for me. At least this way the microphones are pointed in the right direction. He turned the key. The room smelled like air that had been inside too long. A bed with a polyester quilt, the color of wilted avocado. A table with a plastic-wrapped glass upside down on a paper coaster that read, "We care about cleanliness," in a font that didn't T. A TV that still had the back of a whale. The bathroom door opened to a square of mirror that didn't he accept his presence for a count of 3. Then it conceded, and he was in it. 2 artifacts waited. On the table, a shoebox water-warped cardboard, lid bowed, and beside it, a cassette tape in a clear case, label handwritten. The Haunting Hour pilot. On the desk by the window, a highway patrolman's cap. It gleamed dully, not polished, not neglected, cared for the way you care for a headstone you visit, because you must. Nadia's voice came thin now, as if speaking through cloth. "We have audio of your voice overlaying the bumper," she said. "It's not you. It sounds like you if you'd smoked for 30 years. He set the recorder on the table and clicked the marker. Motel 13 interior. Artifacts present. He didn't open the shoebox. He couldn't make himself repeat Red's mistake. Or maybe he didn't want to be better. He wanted to be different. He touched the tape. The spools had wound themselves to near leader. A few brown inches left. He didn't own a player in the room. The TV hummed at him instead, screen dead, but ray tube singing. The bathroom faucet dripped on its own steady medical, the kind of drip you time blood to. The mirror fogged without steam. In the fog, a circle appeared, badge ring pressed in. Beneath it, time sketched in with a finger, 3:33, then 12. Then 3:33 again, as if the mirror couldn't decide which world it reported to. He lifted the recorder and spoke for the room, for the audience, for the unnamed admission clerk in Blackwood, who had printed his forms. If there is a system behind this, it prefers junctions, roads, halls, rows, glass, water, tape, lists of names. It uses procedures because procedures are how humans believe reality is maintained. The TV clicked on without the courtesy of a button. Snow first, then image, not a channel feeds. 4 quadrants, like someone's idea of security. Top left, the Blackwood Ward Mara's hallway, the kite's tape tails pointing like compasses. Top right, Owen's kitchen, the window, with the 2 circles of breath making a figure 8 faint in the corner. Bottom left, Salem. The study flickering with an orange, not yet flame. Bottom right, the motel office, the clerk, staring at a screen that showed Miles's room. Miles in it. Miles watching the TV watch him. Nadia made a sound between hiss and prayer. "You're being observed," she said. "So are they?" he said. The idea did not comfort him. It comforted something else. The phone on the nightstand rang a bell so analog it felt theatrical. He stared at it until it rang 3 soft, 1 hard. He picked up. "Broadcast unit," said a man's voice with the dryness of a well-kept page. "Admit complete. Who is this?" Miles asked, ritual failing, anger useful as sugar. "Rowe," the voice said. Calm, official, worn to grain. "Officer Charles Rowe." He closed his eyes, the entire circle of the show condensing into the shape of a badge, a road, a wet bouquet. "Where are you, officer?" "In the alley behind your station," the voice said. "In Ward C, in the north quarter. In the mirror on a landing." "Depends on who's looking. Depends on who's listening." "What do you want?" Miles asked. He meant, what does the thing that wears you want? "To lift," said Rowe's voice. "It's heavy. We can't carry it without you." "What is it?" "The haunting hour," the voice said, like a man reading a memo he didn't write. "The hour must be kept open. The hour must be staffed. The hour must be observed. The hour must be named." The bathroom light clicked off, then on. The mirror now showed not the square of the motel bathroom, but the studio on air light red and empty chair breathing. The faucet drip shaped itself into words on porcelain name, then sloughed back to water. Nadia whispered, "He's trying to get you to speak your name into the room." "I know," Miles said. "Don't," she said. It wasn't producer anymore. He set the handset down gently so the call would stay open and walked to the desk. He opened the room binder, the plastic folder every motel has with laminated pages about ice machines and pizza partners. Inside, behind the polyester smiles, an extra page waited. House rules lodging for the broadcast unit. Check in by 3:33. Keep lines open. Admit your name. Lift when asked. He took the Blackwood admission form from his pocket and laid it over the rules. The paper made a new stack hospital over motel, two bureaucracies trying to occupy the same inch. He pressed his marked palm onto the stack and felt a small, real resistance, like pushing a magnet against its twin. He said, to the room, to the recorder, to the clerk watching a TV watching him, "I decline admission." The TV glitched. The quadrants smeared into one, then corrected. Blackwood's PA flicked alive in the motel speaker. Code gray unresolved. Owen's VHS tape thinly whispered through the radiator. My. Silem's chant braided into the bathroom. Fan. Name. The space under the door darkened. Something slid, a pale hand reaching knuckle first, palms up, feeling the carpet like a blind thing working its way into warmth. The nails were clean. The skin had the unashamed blue of hospital light. Nadia's voice snapped sharp, a life preserver thrown correctly. "Iron. You have iron in the car. The tire iron." He moved quickly, not bravery. Obedience to the living and fetched it. He laid the iron across the threshold. The hand paused. It patted the bar, curious, then recoiled like it had recognized a snake. The phone on the nightstand breathed. Rose's voice again, thinner now, as if the line ran through water. "You can't hold the door forever, Miles." "Maybe not," he said, "but I can keep the lines." He picked up the cassette, thumbed the pilot label. He held it for the microphone. "If I play this, what happens?" "You staff the hour forever," said Rose's voice, not unkindly. "You give us a place. We give you a name that doesn't die." "Hard pass," Nadia said in his ear, free of metaphor. He set the tape down. He lifted the shoebox lid half an inch, enough to smell wet roses, and something metallic held too long in a close space, then shut it. "Not this way," he said to no one he could see. The TV blanked. The motel sign outside went silent. The air conditioner died mid-breath and came back on shuddering. The pager lit one more wrong-time bulletin. Lodging event. Deferred status. Observation continues. Time, 3:33. He turned back toward the door, toward the iron and the hand beyond it. The hand had withdrawn. Under the threshold, a thin receipt pushed through like the motel's printer had forced it under. Motel 13? Receipt guessed. Check out. 333 total. $0. Signature. Gray already there. He didn't touch it. He didn't say a word. He lifted the recorder instead and said, "Listeners, if you're still with us, we are leaving the room now." He meant, we will not sleep here, we will not sign here. We will not learn what the bedding feels like against our skin. He stepped backward across the iron. He didn't turn his back to the mirror. He closed the door with care. In the office, the clerk watched him on a screen, then away from the screen, then on a ledger. He didn't say good night. He said, "Keep your line open." "Keep your line open," the clerk echoed, because that was the rule that mattered. He drove back with the pilot tape and the admission form and a receipt he didn't accept, but that existed anyway. Nadia stayed in his ear, reporting the small movements of other worlds. Myra's paint still blistered, but holding. Devin humming a children's song. Owen's father set a real fence. Salem's cruise contained, as if narrating could keep the bridge from dropping. He parked. He carried the artifacts into the station, as if they were borrowed and fragile. Beyond air light flared hot as a brand when he pushed through the door. He sat back at the board. The bed music had run the full file and was looping. He let it die. "This is the haunting hour," he said, and the room accepted the sentence like a key turning. "We won't be staying the night. Not there. We won't be signing. We will keep the lines." He reached for the cassette deck that the station kept for nostalgia and emergencies reel-to-reel in the back room. Cassette on the rack, dusted weekly, because Nadia believes in working relics. He slid the tape halfway in and stopped. He left it there, a loaded possibility, the future perched with its mouth open. "Next," he said, because the hour had a spine and his job was to keep the vertebrae aligned. The host becomes the story. The bumpers rose like the start of a weather system. The printer was quiet, but the studio smelled faintly of desert. Ozone-like heat lightning had written its name and left. The bumper faded like the tail end of a storm siren, its last note swallowed by silence. Miles sat at the console again, the weight of the Motel 13 receipt, the admission form, and the half-loaded cassette stacked like a spine beside him. Nadia sat across the glass in the producer's booth, eyes red-rimmed, but steady, the kind of steady that only comes from running out of panic and deciding to hold fast. The on-air light burned hotter than it should have, as if the bulb drew from something beyond the circuit. The hour felt thick, not just a broadcast anymore, but a kind of infrastructure, a way of keeping the doors between worlds cracked open. Miles leaned into the mic. "You're with the haunting hour. Tonight, the stories seem less like stories and more like coordinates. If you've been listening, you know we've walked roads, swamps, wards, fields, even motels. But every story points back here, to this studio, to this voice, to..." The printer shrieked, cutting him off. Paper spooled fast, nearly a foot before halting. Nadia pulled it free, scanning, and froze. She slid it under the glass. Transcript style. Caller ID, studio. Caller, Miles Gray content. You're with the haunting hour. It was a transcript of the sentence he had just spoken. Line by line, the page was catching up to him in real time, as if the system was writing him into its archive. He felt a cold press along his throat, not hands but attention. Nadia keyed her mic. "Miles, listeners are calling in. Hundreds. But it's all about you. They're saying you're in their houses, their mirrors, their driveways." He frowned. Patch 1 through. Line 2 clicked alive. A woman's voice, shaky. "I'm in Ohio. You're standing in my backyard. You're talking. I can hear you, but the radio's off." Line 3 lit. "A man from Nevada. You're in my kitchen. Same jacket. You keep asking for a pen." Line 4. A child whispering. "You're under my bed. You're counting." Nadia muted all three, color draining from her face. They're not hearing ghosts. They're hearing you projected. You're bleeding out of the studio. The studio's window fogged again. Letters pushed through condensation. Gray. Admit. Same as Blackwood. Same as Salem. Miles rubbed his palms against his jeans. The skin along his knuckles itched. When he lifted them, faint scratches of letters were appearing across his flesh, like his body itself had become a ledger. He spoke low into the mic, half to himself, half to the audience. "It's rewriting me, signing me in where I never consented." The cassette deck clicked. He hadn't pressed play. The tape wound itself a quarter turn, speaker hissing. A voice poured out his own, but aged, hoarse. "Welcome back to the haunting hour. I've been your host for so long, I can't remember my own first broadcast. Tonight, Another true story from our archives. The sound made the hairs on his arms bristle. It wasn't just mimicry. It was a future broadcast, one he hadn't lived yet, already looping through the system. Nadia stabbed at the stop button, yanking the tape half out. Don't listen. If it runs to the end, it locks you in. The phone lines all lit at once, red bulbs in unison. The console hissed with overlapping voices. Name, name, admit, admit. Beneath them fainter, Rose's voice. Staff the hour, Miles. Keep it open. We can't lift it without you. Miles felt the weight of all the prior chapters compress. Lila's rose bouquet in the patrol car, unfinished delivery. The drowned caller in the bayou, her whisper finishing her own scream. Mara and Devon, trapped in Blackwood, where admission was the only ritual. Owen's scarecrows, silent witnesses waiting for names. Dr. Hale's mirror, already showing him at the console before she burned. Motel 13, ledger full of him, receipts signed without his hand. All roads bent toward him. He turned to Nadia, voice breaking but resolved. If they want me on every channel, every mirror, every yard, they already have the copy. But if I speak my name, I give them the master tape. Nadia leaned in, palm flat against the glass. Then don't. You keep refusing. That's been the only power we've had. The printer whined again, feeding a last slip. Status. Transfer initiated host. Gray. Miles destination. Dead air. 3:33. The clock above the board blinked 3:30. 3 minutes. The lights in the studio dimmed to a pulse. The on-air sign grew brighter, blood red, like it wanted to be the only light left. Miles adjusted his mic, steadying his breath. Listeners, if you're hearing me outside your window, in your room, on your walls, it isn't me. It's the echo they're trying to write. If I disappear, remember this. Don't sign. Don't say. Don't lift. Nadia's voice cracked in his ear. Don't do this alone. He forced a smile she couldn't see. That's the trick, Nadia. None of us ever were alone. The lines are already open. The studio air pressed inward, thick as a lung filling. The scratches on his skin deepened. The cassette ticked forward another notch, eager. The phones all rang in harmony like bells, tolling an hour not yet here. The clock rolled to 3:31. Miles kept speaking, voice threading into the storm, trying to anchor the broadcast itself against erasure. And somewhere between words and static, between script and bleed, it became unclear whether he was still hosting the story, or whether the story had begun hosting him. The studio clock bled its way to 3:32. 1 minute left. The on-air sign glared in red, no longer a bulb but a heartbeat, pulsing across the console. The phones howled, not in rings, but in a chorus of overlapping tones, an alarm system of the dead. The half-loaded cassette in Deck B ticked forward another fraction hungry. The printer stuttered out line after line. Transfer finalization. Host. Gray, Miles effective. 3:33 status. Non-reversible. Miles's skin prickled. The faint scratches that had written M.I.L. now bloomed into full script. Miles Gray, etched in livid welts across his forearm. His body was signing itself, whether he wanted it or not. Nadia's voice broke across the talkback channel, sharp and urgent. You don't have to let it finish. If you walk out, if you cut the board, maybe it stops. Miles stared at the faders. His hand hovered. Cut the feed, and the world might go silent. Or the silence might just be another kind of transmission. The lines lit all at once. Nadia hesitated, then opened one. A child's voice, the same whisper from before. You're under my bed, counting. Line 2. You're in my mirror, smiling. Line 3. You're standing behind me now. Nadia jerked, eyes darting to the studio glass. Miles didn't move. He couldn't risk proving the caller right. The clock flipped to 3:33. The studio drowned in silence. Not dead silence, but negative sound. A vacuum that dragged the breath out of the air. The on-air light burned white now, too bright to look at. The cassette clicked itself fully into play. The voice that came wasn't just his. It was all the voices together, woven into a single host tone. Welcome back to the Haunting Hour. Tonight, our host joins us forever. The studio glass fogged again. This time, the letters weren't instructions. They were a signature, scrawled across the partition. Gray, Miles, admitted. Nadia screamed at the mic. No. Don't take him. Take me. The fog cleared instantly, letters smearing into nothing. The on-air sign blinked once, twice. The tape stopped. Miles looked at her, throat tight. You gave it a name. You offered. Don't ever do that. But even as he said it, he knew something had shifted. Nadia had bought him a reprieve, but at a cost. The system now had her on file. The printer spat one last page. Transfer partial host. Gray, Miles deferred producer. Nadia K. Pending status. Observation continues. Miles tore the sheet free, crumpled it, and shoved it under the console. But the words were already burned into the board circuitry, the lights flickering to confirm receipt. The phone stopped ringing. The silence thickened. And then a single line lit up. Line 1, no ID. Just null. Miles hesitated, then pressed it open. The voice that answered was neither male nor female, neither living nor dead. It was a composite, smooth and calm, like every bureaucrat who'd ever read his name. This is not the end. This is the interval. We will call again. We always do. Until someone signs. Until the line goes dead. The call dropped. The clock rolled to 3:34. The on-air light finally dimmed. The studio was just a room again, except for the faint smell of wet roses still hanging in the air. Miles leaned forward, voice raw but steady. Listeners, you heard that. You heard all of it. This isn't my story anymore. It's yours. If you get a call, if you hear a voice under your bed, if a receipt slides under your door, remember the rules. Don't sign, don't say, don't lift. Keep your line open, but don't let it own you. He clicked off the mic. The transmitter fell silent. The hour ended, but the frequency remained.